to another episode of Tatum Talks. I'm Ian Brannan. I'm joined by Speedway legend and commentator on Eurosport and Discovery Plus, Kelvin Tatum, to look back on all the action over the last few weeks. It's been a busy start to the Grand Prix calendar and looking ahead to an even busier June as far as the Speedway Grand Prix is concerned. There's 3 meetings on the cards there, not to mention the action coming up soon as well in British Speedway's Rome Motor Oil Premiership. Welcome, Kelvin. You've had a couple of big trips away so far, and I think since we last spoke, 2 decent meetings actually as well. We'll go back to Warsaw first. Always that question mark of indoor temporary tracks, but I think firmly answered with this one because it was one of the best we've seen on a temporary track, and some drama right from the off, including that what's been termed the sprint race, of course, where the jury was out in our last conversation, but I think actually it produced a good race.
Yeah, it did, and I had my reservations about the whole concept of bringing in World Championship points for qualifying. But actually, from a TV point of view, when they came out for the second run, all of a sudden, then the jeopardy was there, because you saw riders that had been slowest in their first runs sort of turning that around and becoming the quickest, and so that caught the imagination. Certainly it got me going, and then having a race which was actually an entertaining race, which, to be perfectly honest, for Dan Bewley picking up an extra 4 points and then adding that to the 11 points he scored on the night, you know, he walked away with 15 points, which is a final. So so from that perspective, obviously it was terrific, and it did bring a dimension to the qualifying that we have never had before. So I thought it was good, actually. I thought it was okay. It was better than I expected.
Yeah, I thought so too, and like you, I was wondering, interested to see how it was going to pan out, but I didn't expect the amount of drama that I felt watching it, and the jeopardy of wow, and then you had that last minute situation where Lambert then is back in to the final as well. I mean, that wasn't ideal maybe, but it was a bit of a curveball for the entertainment.
Well, we didn't know what was going on, Chris and I. We just had absolutely no idea what was causing the problems. There had been an issue with one of the graphics where Kubera's time had actually been put up later in that session, but it was Dan Bewley's time. So that was an issue that clearly the FIM then didn't trust the times, and then there was a sort of a bit of a shenanigans about that. And then I felt for Kubera really, because he should have been really the rider to make that sprint race. But nonetheless, it all added to that sort of an hour and a bit of qualifying that we've never really experienced before. So I think, although we had another good weekend last weekend in Munich, or in Landshut rather, in Bavaria, I did miss that excitement of the qualifying. So who knows, we might see a bit more of it, but we'll see it again, of course, in Cardiff. But reflecting on the Grand Prix in Warsaw, you're right, it was a super Grand Prix, healthy crowd as always, major city, track behaved itself, the roof was open, so although it was chilly, they obviously were confident that it wasn't going to rain, and it was Jason Doyle's moment, and his performance that night was exemplary. 6 rides, he won, 6 wins and a second place, coming away from there leading the World Championship with the first and the second. I mean, and an Aussie won too. I mean, it was an extraordinary outcome in lots of ways. Zmarzlik making the rostrum obviously kept the home crowd reasonably happy, although their expectations are for him to win. And I'm sure a win will come, but he's getting closer. He was second on the night, but he's getting closer. But all in all, it was a decent night of Speedway, and one that I thoroughly enjoyed.
Yeah, lots of drama, and I think a positive one for the Brits overall, encouraging signs at that stage. Obviously, it's been followed up by the Grand Prix in Landshut, we'll talk about in a sec, but for that sprint race, 3 Brits in that final, and it started well for Woffy, for Bewley, for Lambert. They were all cooking away there in the early stages, and then perhaps started to fall away as the meeting went on. Certainly, perhaps in Woffy's case.
Yeah, difficult to understand what happened there. he looked really impressive with 5 points from 2 rides. Subsequently scored 1 from the next 3. It makes. I'm sure they're scratching their heads in that team because go from looking like you're somebody who's going to be threatening for a win to dropping out before the semi-finals. So Ty's got to figure that out because he's got off to a poor start this year, and he needs to turn it around because Grand Prix status is in question. Whether he'd keep getting wild cards, I think there'll come a point where he wouldn't. So he's got to do something this season that makes the organisers believe that he can produce what he's done in the past. Regarding Bewley and Lambert's been pretty solid actually so far. He's been going along pretty well. He could have easily have made all 3 finals this year so far, Robert Lambert. He should have made the final in Croatia in lots of ways. He was riding really well. Made the final, of course, in Poland, but and got close again in Munich. But the 3 Brits had decent nights without being super spectacular.
So the podium then was obviously Jason Doyle on top, and massive for him though on a personal level as well. He's had lots of doubts and changes of engine tuner and people around him. A lot of work's gone in to not win a Grand Prix for such a long time, having been world champion. That is I think it's been a surprise to Jason Doyle more than anyone else that it's taken so long. But finally he's got there, and I think you could go to one of 2 ways. I think as a rider. There, you could just spiral out of control and never be seen again. But it just shows that if you really put your mind to it and you back into it and make the right changes and get the right people around you, that now Jason Doyle is obviously at this moment in time of recording this, he's not at the top of the championships, but he's there or thereabouts again, and he must feel for the first time since 2017 that he's in the race.
Yeah, and I can't disagree with that. And I think that he's a rider that has had a lot of pain in recent years. When I say that, not that physical pain, but mental stress, because things haven't gone as well as he would have liked. He had 2 seasons in 16 and 17 that were extraordinary. He hasn't been able to replicate that subsequently. But, he got off to a strong start, although he didn't win a race in Croatia. He then won 6 races in the Narodowy in Warsaw. And he didn't quite go as well as he would have liked in Landshut, but still he's right in it. He's in 3rd place, only a few points behind. So Jason Doyle is somebody that you can't rule out, because I tell you one thing, he's going to be, as long as he's not hurt and he's physically capable to race, he knows what it takes, Ian. And the fact is that he will, after a strong start like this, I would be very surprised if he allows it to slip away. I get the feeling he's one that would be looking to maintain that level of performance. So, look for him to be pushing for another title, definitely.
And I think that's the thing, isn't it? Obviously the trophies are handed out at the end of the season, but it is important to make a good start to a championships to get you in the race and feel that you've got something to defend, rather than take a couple of pastings in the first couple of rounds and then you've got that uphill task it's out of your hands. You're trying to make up the ground. You're hoping that somebody has an off night, and you're out of control with it, aren't you? You're just hoping for favours elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have the destiny in your own hands. And, you look at riders like we've mentioned, Ty, who's got off to a poor start, Leon Madsen, another one. Freddie Lindgren has dropped away in the last couple of rounds after an encouraging start, surprisingly from Freddie. And now, all of a sudden, the discrepancy, you look at Lindgren, he's got 26 points. The leader's on 50. All of a sudden, that's a lot of points to drag back. And Lindgren's only there to win it. He doesn't want to make the numbers up. He's been third, he's been fourth, third, and he was second last year. He's 38 years old. He's looking to be world champion, and all of a sudden he walks away from the third round in Germany and sort of thinks, crikey, a realistic chance of being world champion is possibly beyond him now. It's got to be top 6 and making sure that he's back next year. But good strong start from both Aussies. And of course, Zmarzlik, three finals. leads the championship without being at his very best. That's ominous. But still, there's been plenty of other things to shout about, which is quite. Some of the newcomers have done quite nicely, and we'll chat about that. But the top three, I think, are going along nicely. Jack Holder has done really well, actually. I think he would have been bitterly disappointed when Lambert just pipped him in Warsaw for a final. But I tell you what, Jack Holder showed a lot of strength to turn his night around in Landshut. He was going along and it wasn't really happening, and then suddenly he had to win a race. Heat 18 did it and made his way through to the final. And those sort of nights when you aren't at your best and you still got on the rostrum, those are the nights quite often you take the most from. They give you the biggest boost because you've come away with a big haul of points when you haven't been quite at your best. So fair play to him.
Well, let's talk about Landshut then. I take it you avoided the Bavarian beer tent and all the temptations that come with it, because he sounded all right on the commentary and fully complicit. Looking at Landshut then, it's the first time we've had a Grand Prix there since the days. Well, Hans Nielsen was the previous last winner of a Grand Prix there, and of course it was a Dane once again on the top step in 2024 with Mikkel Michelsen winning the final. Bartosz Zmarzlik, as you just mentioned there, also, he's creeping in there. He's getting the points. He's not making any great ceremony about it and spraying the champagne too much, but he's there or thereabouts. And Jack Holder third with also good performances there. Dominic Kubera, Robert Lambert, Leon Madsen, Dan Bewley, Jason Doyle making up the top 8 on the night. So very much all in the mix and taking some big points back with them afterwards as well. But again, I think a lot of people, the jury was maybe out with this, with Landshut. Is it going to be gate and go? Is it going to be hard to pass? But we had some great racing.
Yeah, I thought that Landshut was in grave danger of being very much after the Lord Mayor show. When you look at capital city Warsaw, Narodowy, the number one stadium in the country, huge crowd, great night. Going to Landshut, which is a permanent track. It's narrow, it's big. I've been there, and there's been some dull meetings, and I just thought, crikey, I don't want it to be like that, because the organisers down there had put such a big effort in, and fair play, we really enjoyed it, and I think people that have watched it must have enjoyed it, because some of the racing was spectacular and high speed, plenty of passing. Unexpected that, and very welcome. Great crowd, lovely weather. It was a really good Grand Prix, and they should be rightly proud of themselves. As I say, some of the newbies, the Germans probably the only disappointment. Obviously, the Germans didn't go that well. But for Michelsen, let's get back to the winner. Michelsen, wow, what a night for him. Redemption. All the heartache, all the soul searching at the highest level. He was winning European championships for fun. His Grand Prix was absolutely survived. His Grand Prix status survived because of the European win. He wouldn't have got a wild card. His form just wasn't good enough. And boom, he comes away out of gate number 3 that had only won a couple of races all night, and he won. And I'm sure they feel they must be just can't quite believe what happened. Brilliant effort from him, but it was a good night all round, Ian, wasn't it? That race with Wozniak, I think it was like heat 15 or something, when he overtook a couple of times Zmarzlik. I mean, it was breathtaking stuff. Really good, really, really good night.
Yeah, and even from the get-go, I think heat 4 as well, there was an amazing pass up the inside. Was that Zmarzlik as well? When he came flying through the pack, I think in his first heat, that was, it was evident straight away that there was going to be some good racing, and thankfully, the track didn't change too much. It didn't drop off really, and we had, great, as you say, great entertainment throughout, and And then looking at the World Championship standings now, as we head now into a very busy June. But as you mentioned there, Bartosz Zmarzlik is creeping in there, getting on the podium regularly or thereabouts, and he's on 50 points now and leads the World Championship standings, having not won a round yet. Is he going to go for the full Mark Loram and make it the full distance without winning one? I suspect he probably will get one at one point. Second place, Jack Holder. He's got to be happy with that. 2 points behind Zmarzlik after the first 3 rounds. Jason Doyle in third on 47 points, so just 3 points in it in the top 3. And then just slightly behind, 41 points, Robert Lambert fourth. Mikkel Michelsen fifth on 36. And then there's a bit of a break down to 28 points with Dan Bewley in sixth place, Vasilik seventh, Lindgren eighth, if we go to the top 8. But they're all fairly close by. Once you get to 7, 8, there's a number of riders.
Not a lot in it, is there?
24 gets you down to 12, doesn't it?
Exactly. So, a big performance from one of those lads, and all of a sudden they could leapfrog almost back into the top 8 and be on the verge of the top 6, because with Bewley on 28, and if you're Wozniak back in 12th on 24, that just shows you how compact it is there. So one big performance from those lads could see a huge change. Yeah, very busy June. June could be a pivotal month in the outcome of everything. Medals, Grand Prix, top 6, and everything else. We've got Prague, Melilla, and Gorzow. So quite a variety of tracks there. Prague can be a bit hit and miss. Can be boring, can be great. I'm hoping that it's great. I know it's sold out. I saw Pavel Ondrusik there in Germany. He's delighted. They had a great response for uptake on tickets. Obviously, Yankovic is their man, and maybe he's sort of rekindled some enthusiasm in that part of the world. But as I say, Jason Doyle holds no fear for him going there. He's won there before. Jack Holder had a good round there last year on the rostrum. I think riders like Martin Vasilik will be disappointed. Freddie Lindgren in 8th. He's interesting to me because I didn't see what happened. The last time I saw Freddie Lindgren ride in Landshut, he had an 18-point maximum in an SON qualifier. He was nothing like that. I mean, he was off the pace and never turned it around. So he needs a big night. And of course, if he could get on a roll and then he goes to Melilla, where he'll want to do well, obviously his home Grand Prix. So it's a really big month. But I think for everybody concerned, I think there's still everything to race for. I think the one massive name right down there in 13th is Ty. And I think the next 3 Grand Prix, I don't like saying this, but I think you can't avoid it, is that the next 3 Grand Prix could decide his Grand Prix future.
It must be frustrating. I'm sure there's nobody more frustrated than him in the way things are going, because he's made some big changes. Of course, he's moved back to Britain now because that was something they felt was maybe holding him back. But as you say, the decisions are not made necessarily on the performance on the last Grand Prix of the night and of the season. You need to put your performances in earlier than that. I'm not sure. Prague, he's gone there. He's won Prague before, I think, over the years. Yeah, he's won there before, but it's so it's a track that he knows he can perform at, and this part of the season, in the years where he's won the world titles, this is sort of where it picked up for him, wasn't it? He kind of got on a run around now, Prague onwards, and started knocking the big scores in. So these are all tracks that he should go well at.
Yeah, and he's 12 points behind Bewley in 6th, which is not insurmountable. But as I just say, if he has the sort of performances, if they continue like they have in the first 3, if the next 3 are the same, then I think he'll be cut adrift, and it will be very difficult for him to fight his way back into a decent position. But he's a bright man. He's an intelligent guy. He's a hugely talented rider, and I'd like to think that he can find it within himself. Because I think this is more than just about changes. You can keep changing things all the time, but sooner or later, somewhere, when you look at performance like Jason Doyle and Freddie Lindgren put in Croatia, neither of them winning a race, neither of them actually at their best, but they finished 2nd and 3rd on the night. and that sometimes is actually that sort of night you walk away from thinking, crikey, I really found it within myself to produce something and get something from the night. And I think that's what Ty needs to do. If things aren't quite perfect, needs to scrap and really battle for a result. So let's hope we see that. But as I say, I think Leon Madsen, another rider that's sort of having a quiet time, he will need to come strong in the next few weeks, because he hasn't got off to the sort of start he would like. And what I would say is, just as an overview, like some of the new lads, like Hülkenberg's had a couple of decent Grand Prix, Kubera came back better last time. I sensed some of that, and Wozniak had a decent night in Germany. I thought he was going to make the semis, but just missed out. You had 9 points you needed for the semi-finals in Landshut, which just shows you how tough it was. But these guys, I just sense they're beginning to find a bit of confidence. You know what I mean? And they're going to up their game as a consequence. So, it's better than I thought it was going to be. Much better. And as I say, right now, it's tightly, all the points are fairly tight, whether you're looking at the top 6 or the top 3. So it's exciting times. And we've had a couple of new winners, haven't we, with Holder and Michelsen, which is, let's hope Robert Lambert can win a Grand Prix soon. That'd be great.
Yeah, he's knocking on the door, isn't he? He must be frustratingly close, but maybe one of these upcoming Grand Prix will be the one that brings it home for him. Looking at Prague then last year, if it's a bit of a gauge, not always, but gives you a good idea. Martin Vašilik, of course, usually goes pretty well in Prague. He was the winner in 2023. Leon Madsen and Jack Holder were also on the podium, and there he was again, fishing around Bartosz Zmarzlik without any great ceremony, but he got fourth. He got to the final last year. So those are the riders, and all riders, of course, that are in the tournament this year as well. So you'd expect them to be very much in the running come the shake-up towards the end. But as you say, we never know. That's the beauty of Speedway. There's always one or two surprises in there. And then moving on to Melilla, it's a big weekend, isn't it? Because I think they've got SGP.
Oh, we've got SGP 2 on the Friday night.
Yeah. So that's obviously the night before. So you get there's a double amount of speedway involved there. Double amount of work for you, I think, there, isn't it, Kelv? Are you going to be commenting on that as well?
We do, yeah. We have to chit-chat about the SGP2. So I have to get up to speed with the youngsters that are coming in. We've had one or two lads obviously move out. The champion, obviously, Sieniak is gone and Kowalski's gone. Some of those meetings can be pretty good, actually. If you're interested, I would take a look. But yes, it's a big weekend. And Melilla, if the weather behaves, slightly earlier than we normally have it. It doesn't often come in June. It's normally in August. So let's hope we don't get, because in August, for some reason, it often rained there. But let's hope that we have a nice weekend there. But because it's one of the best tracks, permanent tracks, on the calendar. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's a big, huge wood, and it's not that easy to get to. But it's a fabulous racetrack when the conditions are right.
I seem to remember that the top tip for Speedway fans heading to these remote locations in Sweden, the done thing with the Swedes is they buy, these foam floats that you buy to go swimming, like that kids have for swimming. That they buy them, and that's what you need to sit on, is a swimming float. It's the must-have accessory in Swedish Speedway. Yeah,
because most of the time you're sat on concrete, which is not it's not the most comfortable, or a grassy bank that might be slightly damp. I think that makes sense to me.
And then Gorzow is at the end of the month, and that is another double whammy as well, because SGP3 is also happening that weekend as well. So that's something that you're starting to see the kids of various champions coming through there, aren't we? Because is that one that, is it Brian Anderson's son is involved? Or is he the reigning champion, Mikkel Anderson? He was the champion the previous year, wasn't he?
I don't think it was last year. I think we had a Swedish lad win it last year.
It was...
His name escapes me.
Rasmus Carlsen.
Yeah, so he did rather well. And Mikkel Andersen just missed out. He
That's
won the
right,
year before, but he's moved on now. He was actually too big. You could see he was a bit too big for the 250 last year, Mikkel. I think that contributed to making his life a bit tougher. But yeah, the SGP3 meetings have actually, I think we've had one in Wrocław and then we had one in Melilla.
Yeah.
They were both good meetings, actually, both really good meetings. And Gorzow should be a really good track for him. Again, you know, Gorzow, great track, proper speedway town, you know, not the most affluent of places, but there's no doubt they love their speedway. And we have had some terrific GPs there, so another big night ahead. And who knows, you know, it's the homeland, it's the backyard for Bartosz Zmarzlik. That might be his first win of the season. He'll certainly want to win it if he can. He's won it before. But as I say, with the 3 Grand Prix, all good tracks. You know, Prague is a little hit and miss. Melilla and Gorzow, you would say, were better speedway tracks. And you get, as long as the weather doesn't intervene, then you will get fantastic racing. And it could be a very exciting month. Well, it will be an exciting month of speedway. There's no question about it.
Yeah, lots to look forward to there on the main Speedway Grand Prix, and then the support classes as well. I guess you'd say with SGP2, the Under-21 World Championship, which is effectively what it is, and SGP3, which is the 250s. And I think William Cairns probably going to be involved in that again. He's one to watch, definitely. He's with he's got Greg Hancock working with him, hasn't he, closely, and he's been pretty electric so far. He's, I think he's turned 16 or 15. He's 14 now. He turns 15 later this year, so he'll be able to go into the National League in British Speedway later on this summer. So I'm sure there's a few people with their eye on him. And of course, his dad owns Leicester, but apparently he doesn't want to ride for Leicester. So maybe that opens it up for everybody else.
Fair enough. Well, yeah, young William has clearly got a lot of backing. He's done a lot of laps. He has experience of doing the championship last year, so you know, that should hold him in good stead. And I don't think that he will turn up with inferior equipment. I'd like to think that he'll turn up with being very competitive. So, you know, it's an opportunity for him to put his best foot forward. So from a British perspective, he could be somebody that can really give us something to cheer about. So yeah, keep an eye out for him on what should be another, you know, terrific weekend. It's like a festival of speedway over 2 days. So, yeah, looking forward to it.
And I think we've had, you know, 2 brilliant Grand Prix. It's set to be exciting through June. I am now the official voice to introduce the riders at the Speedway Grand Prix as of Warsaw being the first round. And I'm so there you go. I think maybe it's just me announcing them that's actually raising this level of excitement. I don't know.
Well, I would
Probably not.
wholeheartedly get behind it. I'd see no reason not to believe in that. You know, I'm sure there's something that you're just passing on to riders that are instilling that extra energy and extra excitement. I'm pleased to hear it. I'm pleased to hear it.
2 intros and 2 new winners. They've just taken that extra 10% of adrenaline from that start, and it's just pushed them over the line, Kelv.
Fantastic.
Okay, let's talk about British Speedway because, well, you've had a bit of a break this last couple of weeks, but you'll back out again very soon, and you're heading to the bright lights. We talk about Leicester. You're heading to Leicester for Leicester Oxford, I think, is your next fixture, isn't it? But going back to your previous one, because it was a big night at Oleton, wasn't it? Sheffield and Ipswich was that your last mega broadcast?
Yeah, we had you know, the repeat of the grand final second leg, and Ipswich, who hadn't won there for a decade, came out on top, and it was. I would say the racing wasn't of the highest order, but the scoreline certainly kept it alive, and Ipswich did the business. When you consider that, I think their top point scorer was 8 or 9. I think Dan Thompson actually may have been their top point scorer, but I think Sayfutinov and Doyle scored like 8 and a bonus each. It was a real complete performance from Ipswich, unlike what their team effectively has been built around. You know, the top heavy, you know, big top two. I think Sheffield are going through a moment where they're weak at reserve. Carl Howarth wasn't at his best, and they were a little vulnerable there. And as a consequence, they came unstuck. But big start for the year for Ipswich. You know, very different from last season when they were struggling. But they're top of the league. And even with the injury to Danny King, they've maintained their momentum, so they'll be chuffed to bits with that. And an away win at the Champions is always going to be an exciting and a big result for you. So that was decent. And the weather just about held off because it absolutely poured with rain as I walked out of the stadium, so we were lucky there. Yeah, you're right. We go on to Leicester. Hang on, I'm looking up at the board here. We're going on to Leicester v Oxford next Monday. Leicester just beginning to really sort of get going, and I suspected they might. You know, when you look at that lineup, loads of experience of British Speedway in it. Solid looking team. I liked the look of that team. Oxford, they've made a change very early on with Eric Riss coming in, Nikolai Clint leaving. I think they're a good team, but they're struggling at number one with Janowski. Janowski hasn't done as well as they would have liked. They need him to go better. If he starts hitting double figures, Oxford are quite a good team. You know, they've got Chris Harris in there who never knows when he's beat. And I just sense that it's a sort of night where Oxford need to keep it tight. They need to get something out of this meeting if they can. But it won't be easy because I just think Sam Masters is beginning to get going as well now. And I think that, you know, all of a sudden with Frick at the top, Richard Lawson, Luke Becker, Ryan Douglas, it's a decent side. So it won't be an easy night for the Spars.
No, it certainly won't be. And, you know, going back to that, what you were saying about, you know, the Sheffield and Ipswich meeting, that it was really, we talked about Ty struggling in the Grand Prix, but he was the one who helped haul them over the line, or into it even. Not over the line because they lost. It was 46-44. But Ty Woffinden getting 14 points on the night. It could have been a heavy defeat had he and Chris Holder not turned up to the party. Whereas, as you say, with Ipswich, you know, got 3 riders scoring 8+1: Keenan Roux, Jason Doyle, Emil Sayfutinov, and then Dan Thompson with 7+1. And it was all really fairly evenly. It was evenly spread across the whole team, though, wasn't it? There was no one standout mega performer. Yeah,
well, I was fortunate. Obviously, I spent the weekend with Chris. He owns the team, and he said, well, it was a surprise for them because it was like just a team performance that got them over the line that night. Nobody hit double figures, but they all contributed. And that was encouraging from their point of view. Keenan Roux down at reserve obviously is a handy rider. Dan Thompson has been an absolute revelation. He was rider of the night. Ollie Allen, my co-commentator on the night, rightly I thought gave him the rider of the night. And as I say, that was an encouraging win for them away from home. I do think they were. Sheffield weren't at their best. They weren't at their best. Ty Woffinden's 14 points, you rightly say, was an outstanding performance from him on the night. And without that, they would have gone down by 8. You know, if it really could have been quite a one-sided affair. But Chris Holder and Ty Woffinden certainly battled to keep them in it. But Sheffield will need to strengthen up as champions. They will do. I'm sure they've got it in hand and that they're mindful of that. Injuries have played their part, but I don't think they'll wait too long if they feel they need to, or if they need to make a change somewhere. They probably will look at it pretty hard. But Ipswich going on very nicely. I think, you know, for Oxford this Monday coming up, next Monday, I think these sort of meetings are going to be tough for them. But if they have ambitions of making the top 4, which I'm sure they have, they need to be looking to try and register away wins on the road. I just sense that Leicester may just have the upper hand.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how they go this week as well, because I've got tomorrow, at the time of recording this, it's Oxford Oxford versus Bellevue tomorrow night, so I'm doing that one, and that will be interesting as well. Big test there. Bellevue at this moment in time are top of the league. I don't think they'll still be top of the league for much longer because they've ridden more meetings than everybody else, and all the other sides have got to catch up with hopefully a full programme on Thursday with obviously Sheffield, Leicester, Kings Lynn, Ipswich, Oxford, Bellevue, the three fixtures heading into that. But yeah, big test there for Oxford, as you say. Winning the home meetings has to be their aim, and if Bewley and Kurtz come out flying, then it could be a tricky evening.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I'm not that impressed with Bellevue away from home. So I'm more confident about the Spires on Thursday night than I am on Monday, because I think that Bellevue haven't done great away from home. Bewley hasn't been very good on the road this season. I don't know why that is, but they haven't travelled very well so far, Bellevue. I think at home, Oxford are quite handy. So that could be quite a tussle there on Thursday night. A good one to watch as long as the weather behaves. And I think that Bellevue, they had a tight night the other night on Monday, didn't they, against Kings Lynn? And Kings Lynn really aren't that strong at the moment, and they pushed Bellevue all the way. So I think Bellevue have got more. There's more to come from Bellevue. Those are the sort of, like you say, Oxford Spars got to win that on Thursday night against Bellevue. I think they will. I think they'll just about get over the line. Monday night, I think when we present a challenge, because I think Leicester might be a little bit strong for them, but I think it'll be a competitive night at Speedway for sure.
There has been a bit of drama in the Row Motor Oil Premiership involving Kings Lynn. They got themselves in trouble a couple of times. They've been very, very, very naughty. Already under investigation. They've postponed a league fixture on the 4th of May. I know. There's been a lot of wrist slapping going on. A points penalty has been issued. They've had 2 points removed from their points tally. They previously had 2 points, so now they've got 0 and they're bottom of the league. So the fixture, there was talk maybe that the fixture would be, might have been a 75-0 job, and they take the full force of that. But actually, they've been given the points penalty. They still have to race the fixture at some point, so the fixture's still on the calendar there. But really showing that taking action against any club, Kings Lynn or otherwise, who are putting spurious call-offs in when conditions aren't quite right.
Yeah, well, I don't really know quite what to say. It just seems rather bizarre that they are so reluctant to run meetings when, in truth, if I understand it correctly, they had every chance of being able to field a team. And Kings Lynn have been through a really difficult time in recent seasons, and this year seems to be a bit chaotic once again. With all the big headline signing of Artem Laguta last year, and that kind of imploded, and then he left, and then he came back, and it must be difficult for the riders when you don't know if you're going to be racing. Riders, that are, putting their best foot forward for them. Obviously, they've got Nikolai Klink now, they've got Egerson, Palm Toft. To me, they've got some decent riders there, and that Wodjaloo is actually quite useful as well. They had Tarasenko, who stepped down, wasn't it, fairly early in the season, which right from the word go seemed odd, because when he was riding for Peterborough last year, he seemed to be absolutely loving the fact that he was riding in the UK. So, bizarre times, chaotic times at Kings Lynn. Concerning, because effectively they're in a position where it's unlikely that they're going to make the playoffs. So from a fan perspective, how negative is that? To me, they're basically just going to be going along just in hope that they can win their home meetings and have some sort of success. It's not beyond them, I don't think, for it to be turned around, but it's not very inspiring at the moment, that's for sure.
It's pretty much how we we probably called it at the start of the season with, Birmingham and Kings Lynn being the question mark sides at the moment, and they are looking like they're getting cut adrift. And we do have this situation, which we predicted would probably occur, where we've got two teams out front, and we've got three teams making up the pace, and all level on 9 points at this moment in time in Sheffield, Leicester, and Oxford. And one of those is going to drop out. That's going to be the story, isn't it? Which of those teams who probably on the pace, it's going to come down to a couple of points, and one of them is going to miss out.
Yeah, and long may that continue. I hope that we get that jeopardy and that interest right through until the conclusion of the qualifying rounds before the playoffs start, because that would be tremendous, because sometimes in recent times we've had it all pretty much done and dusted for some time prior to the playoffs beginning. I think, Oxford are a team that can do it, but they do need Janowski to go. You can't keep carrying your number one. He has to weigh in with points. I've looked at some of his meetings, I've seen some footage of it. It looks like he's on the pace, but he isn't making starts. He needs to rectify that. Sheffield we've spoken about. Kings Lynn and Birmingham, I had a feeling that they would struggle, and so far that's been the case. But Leicester, somebody's got to slip up. One of the big boys has got to slip up, I think, for Oxford to go in. And there is some vulnerability with one or two of the other more established teams. So, as I say, there's everything to race for there, and every point will be vital.
It might not be going well for Birmingham Brummies, but certainly one of their riders having a decent season. Tom Brennan narrowly missing out getting into the Speedway Grand Prix challenge, the big one, which is going to be at Pardubice, isn't it? I think later this year on that Golden Helmet weekend when it's going to be decided. But Kai Huckenbeck, Rasmus Jensen, Dominic Cabrera, Max Frick, along with the other four, which are
Pavlicki,
Limbach, Lebedevs, and Warina. And then there's another round yet to happen to get the full 16 riders who will contest that. And Tom Brennan as well also is now the second reserve for the Speedway European Championships as well. So he must feel like he's getting there. He's getting close, not quite there yet, but certainly getting close to these big opportunities really to take you on to the next step, which has long been his aim. He missed out on SGP2 a year or two ago, which I know he was very disappointed at. Missed out very narrowly there, but now he's getting closer to the big land.
Yeah, fine margins. And riding in Ravensburg on Monday, it's bank holiday there, so that was the qualifier he was in. Just missing out. It was a competitive lineup. The riders in front of him all more experienced than him, vastly more experienced than him. And he's getting close. He's a rider that's riding well for Birmingham. He's riding well in a weak team, and that tells you his mindset is strong, and that's to his credit. I think that if he can get the opportunity to go to Pardubice, then who knows? He might just make his way through to being a Grand Prix rider. You just never know. But Brennan is knocking on the door. And it's hugely tough, but he seems to have the presence of mind and the determination to try and make it work. He's a bright kid, he speaks well, he's a bright lad, so I'm sure they're doing everything they possibly can. So Brennan, I think also with the British final around the corner where he came second last year, another great opportunity for him to put himself firmly in everybody's mind's eye, what an opportunity for him, and we'll get into that in a minute. But yeah, Tom Brennan's going along nicely, and as I say, he's on the verge of doing something pretty spectacular.
Yes, well, let's get into it now. British final coming up very soon, and for the first time in a very long time, firstly, the British final's happening on a Saturday, but it's also happening with the three, what you'd say, top British riders. And people go, well, they're not the British riders because they've never taken part in the British Championships the last few years. But, of course, on the Grand Prix level, then you would argue that supersedes that with Ty Woffinden, Robert Lambert and Dan Bewley all contesting the British final, along with what will be the rest of the top average British riders, and those being Danny King, Chris Harris, Richard Lawson, Tom Brennan, Charles Wright, Steve Worrell, Craig Cook, Adam Ellis, Kyle Howarth, who else we got? Louis Kerr, Rory Schlein, Ben Barker and Connor Mountain are the full lineup so far. Of course, there may be some changes nearer the time, but that's the 16 set to contest it.
Having the 3 Grand Prix riders in the lineup is a major boost to the night, and it's a Saturday night, which should also see a big crowd, which I'm excited about that. I think that Bellevue is always a brilliant track, so we get great racing. I think it could well be one of the best British finals we've had in years, absolutely years. The final, okay, you could potentially say the 3 Grand Prix guys could make the final. But Lambert's won it there, Bewley's won it the last couple of times. Woffinden has ridden extremely well at the National Speedway Centre. So, and he's won 3 British titles in the past. It was interesting, actually, I didn't realise I think it was 9 years ago. 9 years ago that Woffinden rode in the British final. So the time has flown by, but it's good to see him back. Brilliant night, and a night that I think that everybody can really sort of lick their lips about. I think it's one that we can get excited about. I think it will be, even riders like Charles Wright, Richard Lawson, these guys on that night lift their game. It's almost like their world final. If you go back to the old days, it's their one opportunity. They're not going to be Grand Prix riders. They're not going to be on the international scene on a regular basis. But those guys, this is the one time when they can really put their best foot forward. And I think with the Grand Prix boys there, it just gives it that extra special feel. And what a night for, if you're an underdog, to do the business. I think it could be really, I'm sure it will be very exciting.
And not long to wait either, Kelvin. It's just around the corner.
Yeah, well, it's on the 8th of June, which is a Saturday, which is a change. We've been on Monday nights, which has probably not been a great night for the championship. And so Eurosport agreeing to cover the meeting on a Saturday night is great news. So big crowds, live TV, arguably the best track in Europe. We've got all the ingredients for a brilliant national championship. So 2024 should be a bit special. Well, I'll tell you what, if you win in 24, sorry, Ian, if you win this British Championship and you with that lineup, that will feel very special, I think.
Well, absolutely. Nobody can say that, that's always been the thing. Oh, well, they haven't beaten Woofy or they haven't beaten Lambert. It'll be interesting. They're going to be there now and they've got to do it on the night themselves, haven't they? Sure. Prior to that, coming up on this next weekend, the 2nd of June, is the British Under-21 final as well, which will take place at Glasgow. Connor Bailey is the reigning champion of that. Of course, he might be in there with a chance as well. But Dan Thompson, I know from speaking to him, he's got his eye on that prize as well. Sam Hagan, I spoke to him yesterday, and he too is geared up for that. He's had some impressive performances at Glasgow, actually. He's done some guesting for them, and I think certainly put himself in Stuart Dixon's diary that night when he was racing against Berwick, Stuart Dixon's side there, in the manager of the two sides now, and certainly reminded Stuart Dixon of what he could do. And then it wasn't too long before he was riding for Leicester, of course. So maybe a timely reminder. But that's going to be an interesting one as well. The likes of Dan Schultz did very well last year. And who else? Anders. Was it Anders Rowe? I'm not sure if he's out of that zone now, but he went through the card and then picked the wrong gate in the final and found himself with a bit of a tough job. So there's that as well, which certainly could have a bearing, perhaps when it comes to Cardiff, on maybe who ends up getting a shot at track reserve too. I think sometimes that does have a bearing. Yeah,
it could very well do, and Sam Hagan's beginning to make a real mark for himself. He's been just going along quite nicely, but he had a winter in Australia, and I think that's really helped him. He's come back from there and has actually sort of really stepped up his game and is beginning to, ride at Championship and Premiership level and picking up points, very useful points. He'll be a major threat there, I would suggest. and Dan Thompson. It wouldn't be a major surprise if they're fighting it out for victory. But let's hope that as I say, that they have a great night up there in Glasgow, because that's no question that's one of the better tracks in the country. Glasgow these days, it's a smashing place to race. So yeah, there's a ton going on, isn't it? It's an action-packed June. We've got a couple of league matches that we'll be showing on Eurosport that month as well. Kings Lynn v Oxford and Bellevue v Leicester. They're coming up later in the month, so we'll be keeping an eye on that and keeping the ball rolling as regards, the build-up towards playoff time. But 3 Grand Prix, SGP3, SGP2, British final. Yeah, tasty-looking month.
Certainly is. And if you're into your live streaming as well, BSN have got 13 meetings in June. So all these rain-offs catching up. So got Berwick Scunthorpe on the 1st. This is the first week. Berwick Scunthorpe on the 1st. On the 2nd, under-21 final at Glasgow. 3rd, Birmingham versus... Is Leicester or Ipswich? That's the Knockout Cup. Is that Ipswich? I can't remember who threw that. Poole versus Redcar. Kings Lynn versus Sheffield. And Scunthorpe versus Berwick. One day after the other. So that's quite a week. Oxford, Ipswich, Redcar, Edinburgh, Oxford v Poole, Redcar v Oxford, Berwick v Glasgow, Sheffield versus Kings Lynn, and Glasgow versus Plymouth. There you go. Should keep us busy. Keeps you off the streets.
Yeah, crack on, Ian. I'm all for... Let me know how you feel at the end of it.
Yeah. I think probably sick of the sight of the M6. I think is probably one emotion I will share. But
dreadful journey home from Sheffield, absolutely dreadful. But there we are. That's just the state of the roads in the UK. But no, I'm as I say, it's a festival of speedway throughout the whole of June. If the weather behaves itself in the UK, I'm sure we'll witness. And I'm excited about the British final. Of course we are, rightly so. And as I say, that night could have some bearing. Simon Stead and Ollie Allen will be there, I'm sure. And with the Speedway of Nations just a month later, then it's an opportunity for all British riders to put the best foot forward. They're right in the shop window, There's the obvious trio, of course there is. But if one of them were to have a bad night and Brennan has a great night, who knows? Who knows? You just don't know. But interesting month ahead.
Absolutely. Lots coming up, both on the domestic front and, of course, in the Speedway Grand Prix series as well. And, we'll catch up at some point to discuss it, I guess, Kelv. Either, I don't know, either after the British final. We'll then know, of course, the wild card for the British Grand Prix as well. After that, if it's not one of the, whoever potentially finishing 4th could get you to Cardiff this year.
Well, exactly that. It leaves it wide open, and the wild card for Cardiff is going to be something that somebody wants. Steve Worrell got it last year. I think it was quite a big ask for Steve. I think he went there and so was really excited about it, but he did find it tough. If somebody like Brennan could get that opportunity, wow, that could be just perfect timing for him. But as I say, the opportunity as a wild card, as an extra bonus on the night, is always something to a subplot that's always worth following. But yeah, I think there'll be so much to discuss. I think probably we give it a couple of Grand Prix and maybe after Melilla, reflect on what has happened halfway through the month. There'll be plenty to chat about. And as I say, the British final will have bearing on the Speedway of Nations and Cardiff, so that's I'm sure of a lot of interest to a lot of people.
Okay, we'll arrange something for then. But in the meantime, have a great trip to your next destination, Prague. Another place with probably no shortage of beer tents, I imagine. That one again. You've got to tread carefully around there.
We were remarkably well behaved, and actually, to our disappointment, as we finished our commentary in Landshut, we thought we were desperate for a beer, but they were sold out. The beer was gone.
No.
The place literally was dry. and we were desperately disappointed. But it'd been a red hot day, and the Germans literally there were well over 3,000 people there for the qualifying. So they got on the sauce quite early there. There were some very, very drunk Bavarians kicking about, but we couldn't get a drink, so we had to wait a little bit longer. But we were actually quite well behaved. So I don't know if that'll be the case next time. I'm not sure, but we'll have to wait and see. But I tell you what, that some of the Bavarians they like their beer. I can assure you.
Oh yeah.
There were some sights. There were some sights there.
It's a party destination, isn't it? I was talking to, I did an interview with Norik Bladorn, and he was talking about going to Landshut and going to Bavaria. And he was saying when he goes to Bavaria, he can't understand what anyone's saying. He says it's very much in a German situation. It's very much like going to Scotland, where they like a drink and nobody can understand what they're saying. And he himself compared it to going to Scotland. It's just that same sort of thing. Scenario,
yeah. The dialect in Bavaria is really strong, and the guys from the north. They'll be chatting away, and then they haven't got a clue what's being said. There's a slang, and they use different words. It really is very strong. And as I say, Norik, obviously being probably from a very different part of Germany, hasn't got a clue what's being said, particularly when they've had a couple of drinks in them. But no, it is the case. It will be well, as I say, I know that the Bavarians certainly. It was a really successful event, actually, Landshut, and I know that it was well run, and they were chuffed to bits with it, with the way it went. So congratulations to them. But no, we've got plenty to look forward to, Ian. I'm excited about it.
All right, cheers, Kelv. Safe journeys, and we'll see you on the telebox soon.
Will do.